You're listening to Blue Jays Nation Radio
with Cam Lewis and Tyler Yaremchuk,
a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Episode 97 of BJN Radio, coming out of the All-Star break on fire, Coombsy. And honestly, I don't even think there's a way for us to properly put into context just how good the Blue Jays were over that 3-game set against Boston, or maybe even it'd be better to say how bad the Red Sox were over that 3-game set. But the Jays came out of the All-Star break like they were shot out of a cannon, outscoring Boston 40-10. That was a very enjoyable series of baseball after a first half that really didn't feature a lot of enjoyable series of baseball.
No, that's about as good as you can possibly come out of the All-Star break. And on the flip side, for the Red Sox, that's about as bad as you could possibly come out of the All-Star break. You could pretty honestly make a case that the Blue Jays might have put the nail in the coffin for the Red Sox season. There's a long ways to go. Obviously, the baseball season does not end in July, and the Red Sox are still 500, but the trade deadline's right around the corner. And if you're Boston, after this stretch of games, like right before the All-Star break, they just got pumped by the Yankees, they get pumped by the Jays. Yeah, I don't think you're going to go be trading prospects for win-now players. The Red Sox might now be in a position where they consider selling. So that's a pretty significant swing for the Jays to just come out and shit pump the Red Sox into that headspace.
Yeah, it's unreal. They were talking about it a lot on the broadcast. Obviously, now the questions for the Red Sox after the series are not, okay, what wild card seed could you be? It's now, do you trade Xander Bogaerts? Do you trade JD Martinez and Nate Eovaldi? Like, not necessarily small moves we're talking about here. Like, these are kind of franchise altering moves that the Red Sox have to consider over the next little bit. And the good news for the Blue Jays, if the Red Sox do decide to go down that route, well, Toronto plays them 6 more times this season as well. So there's a chance that you may have just weakened an opponent you still need to line up against a few more times this season. We'll be talking a lot of trade deadline coming up here over the next sort of week or so as we get closer to the deadline. But let's get into 3 Up, 3 Down, delivered by our friends over at DoorDash. Promo code BJNPodDD gets first-time users of the app 25% off and no delivery fees. We're starting with the up because it was all sunshine in Boston, perhaps too much sunshine because they were talking a lot about how hot it was in Boston, mid-30s. But the first up is just, we talked about the fact they scored 40 runs. That's great. But a guy who was a catalyst for the offense is Raimel Tapia, who had a hilarious inside the park grand slam that was like something you would see in an old rec league slow pitch game where the center fielder just loses the ball in the sun. And my favorite part about that is a couple things. One, Tapia hits it, slams his bat on the ground, and he's pissed off. And doesn't even start running, which is the fact he still legged that out is incredible. And the center fielder for Boston just kind of stands there and is like he doesn't
put in no effort to get it either. It looks so bad.
I couldn't believe it, man. He literally just stood there and stared at the left fielder coming over to get it. And I was like, what are you doing?
The left fielder runs in and slides. It's so dramatic, contorts his entire body to get it into the infield, and it just looks insane. Meanwhile, Jaron Duran's just watching him being like, oh, shucks. If you make that fuck up, at least just sprint to the wall. And everyone's like, well, you lost in the lights and you tried hard, but he just looked like such a baby about it.
Yeah. In that game, Duran also struck out 3 times in 5 at-bats. So not a great night for him, but Tapia on the series goes 7 for 13 with 11 RBI. I also loved in the next game, or it would be the series finale, when they're sitting there talking blah, blah. And Pat goes, it'd be great if he shot one to the gap again here. Could we get another inside the park home run? And as he says it, Tapia shoots one into the deep triangle at Fenway and legs out an RBI triple as well. Just a great series from Tapia. And the fact he's a lefty bat and is starting to get going really makes this lineup more dangerous.
Yeah, it's really funny to go and look at the numbers. So Tapia at the All-Star break has a 688 OPS, and then he has that game against Boston, and the OPS jumps up to 708. And then he has the other game against Boston where he goes 3 for 5, and now his OPS is up to 726. That's like a 50-point swing in a matter of 2 games. But if you look back for Tapia, you go back to the beginning of June, and as the calendar flipped from May to June, his OPS was 598. He was struggling quite a bit. He was one of those guys where we were all sitting here being like, good Lord, they need to find a different left-handed back because this guy's a pumpkin. But since then, he's been completely on fire. His batting average between June and July is 339. His OPS in that stretch is 916. So like Tapia just becoming an internal solutions, a game changer for the Jays. And look, there's no saying that he's going to put up a 900 OPS, 315 batting average the rest of the way. But if he can just be, a good quality left-handed hitter who's getting on base, then that's fantastic, because we thought one of the biggest needs for the Jays was lefty bat. You're going to have to go out and acquire it wouldn't be Andrew Benintendi because the vaccine thing, but a name like that. And now all of a sudden Tapia is killing it. Kevin Biggio has been pretty good too. Maybe that's not a need anymore, and you can just focus on pitching instead. That's a significant game changer for the front office.
Yeah, and I really do think the Jays are in a position here where their play over the next little bit will determine their deadline strategy. And the play of guys like Tapia and Biggio will go a long ways in determining their deadline strategy, because you're absolutely right. Like if you go through a few more series here, granted, your opponents aren't particularly tough for the next little bit here, with St. Louis not having anybody and the Tigers coming up after that. But if you rattle off, 40 more runs in some of these games, then you're probably sitting there going, yeah, we don't need to touch the offense. Let's go. Maybe the couple assets we had set aside to go get that impact lefty bat, let's go move that and get an extra bullpen piece. Maybe that pushes you over the top and you can get a guy. I know I've been beating this drum for a while. Get a guy like a Gregory Soto or something, right? So it'll be interesting to see how these next few weeks or these next few series, I should say, impact their deadline plans. The second up we have is Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who I think we even joked about this earlier in the year when he was going through a point where he struggled. There is always a 3 to 4 week stretch where he is the best hitter in the majors. And it comes every year. And I'm a guy who plays a lot of like daily fantasy, DraftKings, stuff like that. There is always 1 month where Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is in every single lineup I make because he is that hot. That is certainly this streak right now. He ties an MLB record with 6 hits in a 9-inning game. So obviously you have to exclude games that go to extra innings there. He goes 6 for 7. And as you noted, his OPS shoots up quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I've been saying this for quite some time, and there's I don't know if it's really accurate. I've never bothered to dig into it and see if there's anything that corresponds with it, like in regards to their success. But it always feels like whenever Gurriel goes nuclear, the team goes nuclear. It's when they're cold, Gurriel is also cold. And I don't know the specifics behind it, but it's so noticeable that as soon as this guy heats up, the entire team heats up. And that's what we're seeing right now. Like Gurriel just has one of his ridiculous series. He goes 7 for 15, drives in 5 runs. It just seems like he's so locked in. Anything the pitcher throws, he's going to hit. And it's such a contrast to before when he was struggling. And it looks like, okay, every time this guy comes up to bat, he's down 0-2 immediately. He's swinging through everything. But now he just looks so good. And it's fantastic timing because the Jays really, really, really want to come out of the All-Star break and kill it. Because, if you're ripping now and you really establish yourself in the wild card and teams are saying, wow, the Jays are extremely good. This is the team to beat in the wild card race because the Yankees are the team to beat in the American League East, then maybe a team like Tampa or a team like Boston or a team like Cleveland or Seattle, somebody like that is a little bit less inclined to buy. That's why it's so important for the Jays to come out in this second half and rip. And that's what they've been doing. And you get performances from Gurriel, Tapia, whoever, like more of your depth guys. And that's when they really start to like click as an offense.
Yeah, and I like the point about the psychological damage a streak like this can do on some other teams you're battling with in the American League, and we'll have more on that in just a second here. Also, you talk about, kind of quote unquote depth pieces who had a good series. I thought Matt Chapman was putting together some really good at-bats. You go through sort of his box score from the 3 games. He goes 2 for 4 in the series finale. He goes 1 for 3 with a walk. And then in the first game, obviously, he goes 3 for 6 as well. So that guy got on base multiple times in every single game in that series against the Boston Red Sox. He's a guy who I think at the plate has left fans wanting more, certainly would have left then the organization maybe wanting a little bit more when he's up at the dish. But if he can turn it around as well, like we're starting to see shades of the offense that we were dreaming about over the winter, right?
Yeah, it's a lot more looking like what it looked like last year, 2015. We've made the comparison a whole bunch of times this year that 2022 is the 2016 to 2021's 2015 team. And the 2016 team, the bats were frustrating and it didn't seem like they ever really broke out. And that's kind of what it looked like in the first half. There was good stretches, but they haven't really clicked on all cylinders. And it seems like they're getting there now. So maybe they go nuclear for a bit here, and that'd be fantastic to watch because that makes life easier on your pitchers too. Like, one of the hard things about the Jays this year, especially in like April, is they taxed their bullpen so hard because every game was close. They weren't scoring that many runs. So everything was a 1-run game. So if you can just have a nice little stretch here where you're just pumping teams and Jordan Romano gets like a week off basically from pitching and leverage, then, that's a pretty big game changer for what's going to come in September and October.
Yeah. Third up, we have, it's great to talk about the offense and the bats being sexy, but who else was sexy in the series? The big man, Alek Manoah. You want to talk about just a great weekend for viral Jays content? You have the Red Sox and the shit going around with like the Benny Hill playing in the background as they boot around the ball. Once again, like a rec league slow pitch team. But then you also had Alek Manoah telling the Red Sox on a pretty consistent basis to go take a seat in the dugout. Manoah claiming he was arguing to go take a sip of BioSteel, as he is sponsored by BioSteel. But no, if you're even an amateur lip reader, you know what the big man was saying. He goes 6 strong, and yes, he allows 6 hits, but he only or 7 hits, but he only allows 1 earned run and strikes out 7. Man, this guy I don't think he's winning the Cy Young this year, but it is just wildly impressive that in his second season in the majors, being as young as he is, that there's even a conversation to be had about it.
It is. We didn't see this coming. Well, it's always funny for us to point out when we did that preseason show ahead of 2021, and we were like, Alek Manoah is going to come up in August and be a good reliever. And it's like, well, no, he came up in May and has not made a bad start since. And it's absolutely nuts. But it really seems like the kind of star that Alek Manoah is really starting to blossom, especially after that appearance in the All-Star game. He was mic'd up and he was very entertaining, very charming, very confident, but not in a off-putting way. I think maybe some fans might be rubbed the wrong way by it, especially if you're a rival fan. Like, you can see Red Sox fans absolutely hate the guy now, which is funny. Like, it's entertaining. It's good for rivalries. He was striking guys out and then they would look at him and he'd tell them to fuck off, sit the fuck down. And Red Sox fans are online melting down like, oh, why are you telling our number 7 hitter to sit down? It's like, I don't know. Fuck you. That's why. Just deal with it. Like, you just allowed 28 runs. Like, don't talk. And it's just good for banter. It's good for beef. It's fun. Like, beef sells records. That's what we like. And Alek Manoah's he's got the same kind of chat on the mound, swagger personality as Marcus Stroman, but I think it's a little bit more charming because he's not 5'3".
That's the only reason it's more charming.
Yeah, when Stroman was doing it, it's just Napoleonic complex and it's weird. Whereas when Manoah's doing it, it's like, yeah, you're the big man. Like, that's sick.
Strut your shit. It's funny when you said, he's come up and basically not had a bad start. And it got me thinking, like, what would be Alek Manoah's worst start? And like this year, you're right. He really hasn't had a bad outing. Like, he's given up the most earned runs he's given up in a game is 4. It's happened twice, and he pitched into the 6th inning in both of those games. Like, maybe you could argue the one against Oakland was a quote unquote poor start, but like, even that it feels a little nitpicky. You'd have to go back to last September, I guess, when he gave up 6 against the Oakland A's over 5
I have no
innings.
memory of that.
Yeah, like, again, and I do remember it was the one in June against Baltimore. I think that was the game he got tossed when he started plunking a few batters and gave up a few dingers. But like, again, to find like a really bad Alek Manoah start, it's nearly impossible. Like, you're really nitpicking at that point. It's crazy to see what he's done. And yeah, the personality, this guy is endearing himself, not just to Jays fans, but to baseball fans in general. You talked about him being mic'd up and the 3 punchies thing after and all that shit. He's just a really, really likable dude, and the Jays are super lucky to have him.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he's going to become one of the big stars in the team. I remember I was at that game. It was his t-shirt giveaway and the applause that he got when they introduced him. And the same thing with Alejandro Kirk as well. Like, these two guys are becoming just like huge stars here. You thought for years it was going to be Bo Vlad, or, Springer. That's your big free agent signing. But yeah. Yeah, but now it's Alek Manoah and Alejandro Kirk.
All right, that's going to do it for our 3 up. It's awesome. For our downs, Coombsy, we're moving away from the Jays for this because, I mean, the Jays were unreal. There's nothing to complain about in that series, but I'll give the down to the Rays, the Mariners, and the Red Sox, who, I mean, Seattle lost 3 in a row. Boston obviously got swept. Tampa dropped 2 of 3. They get sort of the cold performers of the week, so to speak, because the Jays managed to gain 3 on Boston, 3 on Seattle, and 2 on the Tampa Bay Rays. And now they sit atop the wild card race, number 1 spot. We know they're not catching the New York Yankees. No one's going to sit here and pretend that they are. So the best thing you can do is come top spot in the AL wild card, play the weakest team in that race, and have all 3 of those games potentially, if you even need 3, to be at the Rogers Center. So the fact that they were able to not only take care of business, but got some help on the out-of-town scoreboard is extra encouraging for this baseball team.
Yeah, the Jays really absolutely need to finish in that top wild card spot because they really, really, really want to be the home team. We all know why. It does provide them a little bit of an advantage in these situations. As we're seeing with St. Louis coming to town, there's a potential that if you're playing a team in the first round, maybe they're missing a guy, whatever. But the Jays do play significantly better when they're at home as opposed to on the road. Like you look at the splits and they're very good at the Rogers Center and they're like, they might be over 500 again now after the sweep in Boston, but at the All-Star break, they were, I think, like 22 and 25 away, something like that. So they're obviously a significantly better team in Toronto, and there is a slightly competitive edge. I'm not saying it's, a full-on competitive edge. I understand the rules and the border, blah, blah, blah. Like I get it. But objectively, it is a little bit easier for the Jays to be playing in Canada and for a team to be coming here.
Yeah. No doubt about that. I'm trying to think now just quickly off the top of my head from can you imagine if they matched up against Seattle in a wild card series and Robbie Ray couldn't come here?
Exactly. That's the thing is I don't think any of I'm just trying to think of who, then there's guys on Tampa too.
I don't remember Tampa being as significant.
No,
though.
It wasn't good players. It wasn't like what we're seeing with St. Louis or what we saw with Seattle. Yeah. I don't think there's anybody significant on, there was a few players on Boston, but it wasn't super significant. Nothing significant on the Yankees. So, pretty much if you run into Seattle, that's the one where it really stands out.
Yeah, that's
also,
the dream scenario.
Have we seen Cleveland and Toronto yet this year? I don't think we have.
If we have, it certainly wasn't memorable.
No memory of that happening. So no, it's Seattle is the one where it stands out.
And I do know that Cleveland is coming to Toronto in the middle of August because that's when we're flying out a bunch of our nation's citizens here from Edmonton for our Oilers Nation vacation. I actually think we still have a few spots left. So if you're listening to this and you're from the Edmonton area, you can hop on a flight with us. We were watching the Jays twice, TFC once, although I believe they're hot junk right now. I'm not much of an MLS guy though, but we're watching the Jays twice. We're doing a bunch of fun stuff out in Toronto. You can find out more details at nationgear.ca. All right, let's take a look at a little bit of trade talk here. And Ben Nicholson-Smith had some interesting thoughts in his article over at sportsnet.ca, a little bit of chat about what they're going to do with the back end of the rotation. He mentioned, maybe there's a chance Yusei Kikuchi gets his season back on track. I think at this point, if you're counting on that, you're foolish. Max Castillo is maybe the name you would be holding your breath for a little bit more, is maybe a younger out of the blue option who can come in and just give you 4 or 5 decent starts here down the stretch, right? You're not going to be asking for a ton out of him other than just a little bit of consistency. But as you look at this rotation, Gausman is still pitching well. We'll talk about Jose Barrios in a second when we get to previewing the Cardinals series, but he's even starting to turn it around. Manoah, you're getting good starts from Manoah, and the same thing from Stripling. Like, you are 4 deep right now. I think it's pretty fair to say that. It's a matter of what they're going to do with that 5th arm and how their approach will be in terms of what kind of pitcher they go after. Are they going to, maybe go after a Castillo or someone who they view as more of a potential longer term piece in this rotation? Or are they going to sit there and go, nah, it's rental market for us because of how good our first 3 guys are and the fact we have them locked up. And we're going to try to get a Syndergaard or a Martin Perez or something like that. Is there a name that stands out to you? Is there an approach that stands out to you? Kind of what would you like to see them do? We'll start with the starting rotation specifically.
Yeah, so it seems like they definitely should add a starting rotation arm. Like you said, I think it's a fool's errand to assume that Yusei Kikuchi is going to pull it together and become consistently good. Like, I think you could toss him in the rotation and expect him to have a few good starts, but to expect him to just be like, a quality number 5 starter who gives you 5 innings each time, I don't see it happening personally. So it does seem like the move is to go and acquire a starter. I don't know if they want to, again, because they did this with Jose Barrios last year. I don't know if they again want to go and pay like a huge load to acquire like a top end guy with another year of control. I understand the logic because you're also looking at next year too. You have, a few guys in the mix. You have Manoah, you have Gosman, you have Barrios, and Kikuchi are signed next year. Ryu is probably out for the entire year. Stripling's a free agent. There's a reasonable chance he gets paid like a starter and leaves. I think that's fair to assume. So yeah, going out and getting another starter that is around next year makes some sense, but just given what they've already traded away to acquire guys in the last year or so, I just don't really see it happening. I think you're more likely to see them go and get like a back end arm, the guys that Ben Nicholson-Smith mentions, because starting pitchers who are more pitch to contact guys tend to command less on the trade market. So maybe like a Martin Perez. Noah Syndergaard's the one that always stands out for me. They had interest in signing Syndergaard in the offseason. He wound up taking the deal to sign with the Angels. The Angels are dog shit, so it's pretty reasonable to assume they'll trade Syndergaard. I don't know if this is actually like a fit that makes sense beyond me just being like, okay, it's always kind of felt like Syndergaard should pitch for the Jays. Yeah. Like he was their big prospect, exciting guy that got shipped away in the R.A. Dickey trade. And now it just kind of seems like, okay, like here we are now 8-9 years later, why not make it happen just for a few months? It'd be fun. He really would be a nice fit for the team. It's just like back end arm. Your expectations don't have to be super high. He's made 14 starts this year, has a 4 ERA, perfectly fine. Probably isn't going to break the bank to acquire. So that'd be my number one option for starting pitching. But I do think the big focus for the Jays needs to be deepening that bullpen because as we've seen earlier in the season, once they do get taxed, it becomes very thin. There's some good arms back there, but there aren't a lot of arms that can strike guys out consistently. And that's what you're going to need in late September and come October.
Some names that Ben Nicholson-Smith mentioned coming out of the bullpen, Joe Jimenez or Gregory Soto from the Tigers, Jorge Lopez of the Orioles, who we've seen a little bit this season. David Robertson of the Cubs is a guy who Jays fans would be familiar with, obviously from his time with the Yankees. Kyle Finnegan of the Nats sounds interesting. David Bednar of the Pirates is one that I look at, and that could be a situation where the Pirates are so far out of it that you don't have to wait as long to get them. Like maybe you can jump the market with a guy like David Bednar. Last year, the Jays went with, as Ben noted, more of a bulk approach, right? They got Brad Hand, they got Joakim Soria, and they got Simber and Richards, 4 arms. And like Simber worked, Richards worked, the other two not really. I would argue this year, if I'm in Ross Atkins' seat, I'm prioritizing one impact bullpen piece over going out and trying to get 3 or 4 like little take a flyer on him, see if we catch lightning in a bottle. Like go get a big piece for the bullpen.
Yeah, they have enough arms that are fine. Like you have enough guys like David Phelps, Simber, guys who can pitch that are reasonably reliable, but you really need a contingency plan in like the 8th, 9th inning, just in case maybe Jordan Romano burns out and he can't get it done. We've seen in the past, Romano, if he's pitching too much, he starts to struggle. I'm just thinking of a situation in late September when you really need to win games and you need Romano to come out and get 5 outs. I think he can do that, but I don't think then you can use him in the following game. So I think you need Jimmy Garcia right now. He's been excellent this year. That's been a great addition for the team. He's their other closer. And I think you'd like to add a third one there, just another guy who you can comfortably have come in the 9th inning and strike guys out. And I agree with you. I think it's go all in on a very, very, very good relief arm rather than adding a handful of okay arms, because they have a lot of okay arms and arms that can get them, through the 5th, 6th, 7th inning, whatever. But I don't know if they really have the arms you need to get through Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton in the 9th inning of a game.
Yeah, I think you're bang on with that. Like you got Miza, you got Garcia, you have Romano. Okay, if you need 3 impact arms to get you through the end of a tough playoff game, you have the 3. But as you mentioned, if one of them is taxed, then all of a sudden you're scrambling. You're like, hey, can we trust David Phelps? Can we go with Adam Simmer in the spot? It's just a lot. If you have that 4th impact arm, strong, really reliable, then you're sitting there and you're a little bit more relaxed. If you've taxed a guy, like you said, the game before, like it just gives you way more options out of the pen. To wrap up the trade talk, Juan Soto ?
Yeah, absolutely. I would I'd be all for that. But I mean, that being said, the one thing we can't accept is Raimel Tapia going the other way. He's now the star of the Blue Jays.
We had
We had some good Juan Soto talk in the past. I don't think it's going to happen personally. I don't think the Jays are going to pull the trigger if they're going to trade all kinds of prospects for a guy. I don't know if it would be a position player. I think it might be a pitcher again, but I don't know. I honestly just don't see them doing like a trade top prospects deal again anytime soon. I feel like they kind of went all in to get their guys. They have their guys. We're not going to see that again. I think they want to have kind of that cheap talent coming up through the system to augment the team to be good for a while. That's my guess. I could be wrong. You know, they could surprise in the offseason and throw together an insane package, but I would doubt it. And there's absolutely no way they'll do it in the next week.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, it's not an in-season move. And I know people might roll their eyes at this, but you don't disrupt. Like, if you need to include a Bo Bichette or a Teoscar Hernandez in this deal, I'm a big believer you don't disrupt your core like that in the middle of the season. I just think that's not great for the overall vibes of a clubhouse. Like, as exciting as it would be to get a Juan Soto, I think if it's going to take significant pieces off the MLB roster, then I think you just go park it. Nats, if you still have them in December, we'll chat again at the winter meetings, but we're not doing something crazy like that at the deadline in season.
If they were going to make an insane trade and give up a lot and pretty much gut their entire farm system or trade a guy like Bo, I'd prefer it be for Shohei Ohtani. Yeah. I think that fills the need, right?
That's a no-brainer.
You have a good starting pitcher plus an elite hitter. Like, I mean, that's the guy that I would, and no offense to Juan Soto, who's obviously like a sublime hitter. Like, through his first 5 years in the league, he's like Ted Williams caliber. Yeah. So, I mean, he's obviously fantastic, but if you're going to go and dive in and trade your top 4 prospects plus a guy, then get a guy who bats and pitches.
That's who you do it for. And Ohtani's extension would be stupid, but I look at it from a Rogers perspective. Like, and I remember reading articles about this over the winter. Like, what will the Angels do with this extension? Because what are the market comparables? As a starting pitcher, he's worth probably $30 million. As a hitter, he's worth probably $30 million. So what do? Do you pay the guy 60? Like, you can't even like wrap your head around how much money it would take. But from a Rogers perspective, I think you would just make so much money in the jersey sales alone that acquiring Ohtani and paying him $50 million a year, you could argue, as sick as that sounds, he's probably underpaid at that point for what he would bring to Rogers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is such a unique talent beyond what he is on the field because, again, he's a player from a different country who has a massive following in that country. Yeah. So if you're the Blue Jays and you go and acquire, this phenom from Japan, then you're inevitably going to gain a whole bunch of fans from Japan as well. And that's just great for your growth as a franchise. So like you said, with Rogers, there's advantages to acquiring a player like that. Like, I think they'd make back the money in jersey sales pretty quick, even if they locked him up to like a $55 million annual deal.
All right, Coombsy, let's take a look ahead at what's coming for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a 2-gamer, quick little series in Toronto against the St. Louis Cardinals. It's lining up to just be another great spot for Toronto. I'll go with it from a Toronto perspective. You got Barrios and you got Gausman going, and Barrios is starting to turn things around. Yes, his ERA on the season is 5.22, but in his last 3 starts, he's cleared 6 innings in all of them. And he's only given up 6 earned runs over those 18 and a third innings. So he's starting to turn it around. The strikeouts are coming. It looks like Barrios is starting to find his groove. And now he gets to face a Cardinals team that doesn't have their 2 all-star hitters. It's lining up to be a good 48-hour run for the Jays against St. Louis.
Yeah, circling back, and I wasn't really planning to continue talking about trades, but it kind of is relevant again because as the point we made earlier with like a guy like Tapia heating up or a guy like Biggio kind of hitting his stride means that the need to acquire a left-handed bat isn't quite so great. So now with Barrios, now that he's kind of pitching like Jose Barrios and the pitcher that they expected him to be, the pitcher they got last year when they pulled the trigger on that trade, then the need to acquire like a mid to top level arm isn't quite so much. Right now you have 4 guys who are rolling and the only spot that's empty is the 5th spot. So again, because of that, you can focus your efforts elsewhere, ideally on the bullpen, I think. But anyway, circling back, Barrios has been excellent. Gausman's been excellent. This is a really good chance for the Jays to just take 2 of 2 from St. Louis and keep rolling. Like, That's what you want to see here. St. Louis is a good team, but they're missing their two best guys. They're missing Goldschmidt and they're missing Arenado. So that's a massive hit to their offense. If their two best hitters aren't here, and I don't know if, Kansas City, obviously they're missing 10 guys, but the Royals also stuck. So it didn't really matter. But with St. Louis, this is probably the first example we've seen of, okay, this team's really missing like the heart of who they are. And we're going to see basically a shell of the Cardinals show up.
Cardinals also a super average road team so far this season, 22-26 away from Busch Stadium, 29-20 for comparison is their home record. And the Jays have been a really good team at the Rogers Center this season, going 30-19, and they're hitting their stride right now. So a really good spot here for Toronto. I'm just taking a quick peek at who's starting here for the Cards. It's Palante in game one. He's actually having an okay season here. And then in game two, it's going to be Adam Wainwright, who's 6-8 with a 3.40 ERA. His last time out. Yeah.
He's so old. He's 40.
Yeah, he is 40 years old. He had a great year last year.
He's had a whole bunch of great years. Like I'm just looking at him right now. And in 2017, it kind of looked like he had become a pumpkin. He was 35. He put up a 5.11 ERA. And then he's come back after that in 2020, the COVID year. He does a 3.15 ERA. 2021, a 3.05 ERA. And this year, a 3.40 ERA.
Yeah.
What?
But it is worth noting that in his last start, he gave up 7 earned runs to Cincinnati. So, maybe he's starting to crack again. Maybe that age is starting to show late in the season for Wainwright. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, right?
First ballot, you think? Let's see.
No, maybe, first ballot's probably a little too aggressive.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say because he's had that kind of career that like the writers really like. He played for one team. He's won the World Series. Been on the All-Star team. We never won a Cy Young. Maybe that holds you back. But I don't know. We saw David Ortiz. He gets into the Hall of Fame. He never won Did he win an MVP? No, he didn't.
Did he
Ortiz
not?
Never did. No. And he saw a tremendous amount of playoff success, super clutch hitter, does a bunch of it with an iconic franchise. Don't think anyone remembers that he played for the Twins. So you have a guy like Wainwright. It's like, well, you played your entire career with St. Louis. St. Louis is a relevant franchise, won the World Series a couple of times. Sure. First ballot, you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right on Ortiz. Hey, so there was that run from 2004 to 2007. He finished 4th, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in MVP voting, won the Silver Slugger every year. And then outside of those years, in his final season, he came 6th in MVP voting as well. But other than that, he was never top 10 in MVP.
That was his best season. That last year when he was 40 years old, he puts up a 1.021 OPS, hits 38 home runs, 48 doubles, 127 RBIs. That by OPS was the best season of his career, which is nuts.
That is crazy. Ortiz obviously getting inducted over the weekend into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
How funny is it that they're doing the Ortiz induction this weekend? The Jays just rolled in and kicked the shit out of the Red Sox. It's such funny timing.
Yeah, that was great to see. The Jays just kicked the shit out of the Red Sox and what could have been like a really feel good kind of weekend for their franchise. It was the exact opposite. All right, 2 games against St. Louis, and then we are right back in the middle of the week here, Coombsy. So let's see if the Jays can keep this thing rolling. Do you think when we speak again, we're talking about an 8-game winning streak, the second one of the season for Toronto?
I wouldn't be shocked, but the Cardinals, they pitch well. And 40-year-old Adam Wainwright, who's having a fantastic season for some reason. So I'm hoping for a sweep in the 2-game series, but the Cardinals are decently good, especially in regards to the pitching. So 1-1 wouldn't be shocking, but I think we should aim high and be like, the expectation is a sweep. Let's put it in the universe.
Tampa Bay is playing Baltimore, Seattle is playing Texas, and Toronto, or in Boston and Cleveland are going head to head as well this week. So that's your sort of out of town scoreboard. White Sox are in Colorado to play the Rockies on top of that. So let's see if the Jays can keep it rolling. Let's see if some of those teams behind them can continue sliding and the Jays can continue to increase their lead atop the AL wildcard standings. This has been another edition of BJN Radio. Need to give a shout out to our friends at PointsBet Canada. Odds aren't up yet, but I would imagine the Jays will be heavily favorited with their team total sitting around 5.5 runs for these games against the Cardinals. And I love taking overs, Coombsy, so I'm hammering both of those. You enjoy this series and we will chat later in the week.
Best wishes.
Thanks for tuning in to Blue Jays Nation Radio, a member of the Nation Network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.